Hello, I am Mike Cardus from Organization Development by Mike Cardus. I'm happy to talk to you guys today. I am a University of Buffalo Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership graduate, UBCEL class of 2015. And today I'm going to talk to you guys and walk you through a process and a pattern that I've been using with many for-profit, nonprofit, and multiple size organizations to prepare them on how to get people back to work, recognize patterns in their environment, capture those patterns, and bring them back to the workplace. So one thing to be thoughtful of is this. As an entrepreneur, you are a pattern recognizer. What that means is you're looking out in your environment for government, state regulations, customer behavior, shifts in policy and procedures, all the multiple things that will impact your ecosystem, your finance, your people, your implementation, your strategy, your execution. All those multiple things are happening, and you have to make sense of those patterns to create a viable organization or system in the market. If you are not looking out there now for patterns, recognizing things, you're going to have a hard time moving forward because you're going to be set further back. Additionally, we've seen from a decent amount of research that organizations that move ahead faster are those that pick up small patterns, iterate or do rapid changes on those patterns, and then shifts them to kind of make sense of where they are. So I'm going to go into a shared screen. I'm going to walk through two things. Number one is going to be a way to capture patterns or things you're noticing in the environment. This doesn't have to be you. It can be your employees, your staff, other people. And from capturing patterns in real time, you can amplify, make those things louder, or dampen, make them quieter. Additionally, you need to work on capturing this in real time. Here's why. If you wait until you're fully back to work, or you wait until you're 50% back to work, or you wait until other folks are back to work and your customers return back to quote unquote the old times, there's a good chance you're going to miss emergent new things in your market that help you differentiate yourself above your competitors and make revenue for yourself and your business. As humans, we do an incredibly good job of doing what's called hindsight bias or retrospective coherence. Meaning we get to a certain point, then we look back and we think how we got here is based upon what we did in the past. So in real time, you're going to capture patterns. I'm going to walk through a couple of slides to clarify this for you. So remember, as I go through these, this is something that you can be doing and you ought to be doing multiple times. So success will move only as high as the ability to handle complexity of the individual managing the work. You as a CEO or partner or executive inside your small business, entrepreneurial organization, or solopreneur has to be good at capturing complexity. In this model here, this is something called types of systems and degrees of order and stability. It looks a little overwhelming, but you understand it and you'll quickly see yourself inside here. What we see over here is this, we're called types of systems, right? Types of systems means how the work gets done. So think about from a highly mechanistic organization where there's rigid controls, there is not much flexibility, it is fully dependent upon interactions, and stability is what helps a company operate, all the way to a totally random pattern of organizations. I'm sure in your lives, you've seen variable parts of these organizations. Many of us became entrepreneurs because we were pushed out of hierarchical or mechanistic organizations because we were heretics. We saw things differently. We saw patterns. That's what made us entrepreneurs. That's what brought us to the UB program in the first place, to create new patterns and recognize things. Once the environment shifts, so COVID-19 hit your organization, not just you, it also hit all your competitors. That gives you a chance to re-level the market system or re-level the playing field. Think about it as if think about it in a evolutionary or in a natural science standpoint, right? So there was a time when dinosaurs ruled the earth. Dinosaurs ruled the earth for millions of years. Asteroid came, hit the earth, destabilized the environment. Once a destabilizing thing hits the environment and shifts it that fast, typically a small competitor who doesn't use a lot of energy ends up dominating the market. Right now you can shift that, which is why right now your focus has to be on this complex zone of emerging complexity. So controlling mechanisms, largely self-organizing, You need to be able to create patterns and allow your staff and yourself ways to kind of identify what's working in the field, to capture what's working well, to self-organize and feed it back to you to create patterns. Nature and relationship between agents. Agents are individuals, staff, customers, employees, highly networked and highly connected. They need to be talking now more than ever, creating what works, failure stories, update stories, shared network stories, customer stories. That will help an awful lot. Additionally, it's fluid and independent, meaning the interactions are not forced, they're not prescribed. There's a system to capture the feedback. And the outcome is a flexible new order involving radical and or incremental changes. How you handle the system now will create the future you currently want. So how do you capture these things in real time? We'll create a process, or I call it a cadence, a habit of cadence to capture feedback in the environment in a way where you're not doing it. We can decentralize to your employees and then make a theme of it. Here's what we do. We define complexity as this. Complexity may be identified in terms of the number of variables that have to be dealt with within a given time, situation, and the clarity and precision with which they can be identified and the rate of change. I'm going to show you now the process we use, and it's been highly successful. And if you do it, you'll find different patterns in your organization, and in small real time, you'll amplify things. It's called Working Well, 100 Days Better. So essentially what you do is gather your staff and you break down the 3 columns, right? You ask your staff and you ask yourself, while you're out there in the field or you're recognizing things, what things are distinctive about the work? What stands out to you? If you're talking to specific customers, what's distinctive about their environment? How they're doing things, the feedback, the interactions. What makes this customer or this client or this time different than other times? What about this work is separate or unique? Next part is working well. Currently with our customers or our clients or out there in the environment, what things are working well enough that it does not require extra need or focus? We can let it be, let it operate, leave it alone. Additionally, what areas of our work are operating to our customers' delight and satisfaction? You're capturing those things. The third column would be looking out what would be better in 100 days. Sometimes you can make the time frame smaller. It can be 30 days, 45 days. You can frame it, but saying what small improvements can we make to make our work easier or to improve our current customer interactions or employee experiences. So these 3 things are relatively simple to capture, and you can create a cadence with your team and staff to capture these things. Number 1, what is distinctive? So while you're out there in the field and you're talking to customers, or you're talking to vendors or payers, whoever you talk with inside your business, be mindful about what is distinctive, what's special or unique or different about this interaction. From the differences, you can capture things to test and do. Number 2, what is working well? Amongst the organization and the process, what things are working relatively well that we don't have to change or adjust? With the working well piece, you're trying to find things to amplify, or to kind of say the reality is not everything is crazy right now. We don't have to change everything. These 4 things are working relatively well. Closing, you want to say, what are some small improvements we can make? This, if you think about it, is like an after action or debriefing process. So here's the way we create this in the columns. And I highly recommend that you make a column chart like this. If you have field staff, so if you're in services, plumbing, HVAC, those who are going into customers' houses or doing direct application to customers, or if you have a sales team or a marketing team, I recommend you have all your employees daily at least begin to document what was distinctive, unique, or special about the interactions today. What was working well in our work? What small improvements can we make to make things better next time? And as they're capturing these things on a daily basis, you're going to want them to send to you every week their documentation. And from the weekly documentation, you're going to look through that for patterns and figure out in the distinctive column, what things do we think that are currently standing out that we can use to create a future market need, or we can create ways to develop services or products or variances in our work to supply new things that are there. In working well, you're going to identify things that are working relatively well you're going to keep captured or utilize over and over again, and then say from those things, how do we feed that back to our staff? And small improvements, those can be things you can actually put into a document and write down ways to improve them or to make changes. Here's why you're doing this. You're trying to get people to interact in real time to recognize patterns, much like in this first slide that I shared. You're trying to push things into this complex zone. If they're operating too hierarchical, they're not going to see patterns. And the hard part is you're going to break. Your system is too rigid in the hierarchy. You need to bend your system a little bit more. And from the bending, create a way to capture real-time processes. And as the CEO or executive director or partner of your entrepreneur organization, you have to find a way to look at that, look at the patterns, and make sense of it. This process of distinctive, working well, small improvements does that for you. It creates a way to capture this. So once you have the small improvement document, I'm going to email all these slides off to Erin and she'll share them with you. You then create what we call action planning for short-term visible projects. So here's what that looks like. You identify what our goal is and what it will look like when it's accomplished. So you, as the entrepreneur or the business owner, and maybe your executive team, or if you have managers, they can also do this. So you read through your distinctive, working well, small improvement documentation. From that, you kind of say, what patterns are we seeing? There's a reason you're asking folks to identify patterns. As an entrepreneur, you cannot do it all. What you can do, though, is create a system for folks to do work to change your work in real time. And from that loose network pattern, you're creating new ways to amplify your work. So you'll ask folks to identify this sheet. It's a simple worksheet. I will send you the worksheet through Erin. Where is our goal and what will it look like when our team has accomplished it? Next part is, how will we see this helping with the unique needs of our customers? Third part is, where will we begin? Next part, whom do we see ourselves collaborating and communicating with to make this happen? Next part, when? What time frame for actions do we need to set up? Final part, how will we be communicating success? So in all these pieces, what you are doing is developing a way to capture patterns and feed it back. I know I said patterns like 1,000 times in this video, but that's your job. Once you get your people out there and they're finding patterns, they can start repeating it back to you. And through pattern recognition, you can create a way to get folks back to work successfully and bring them in. I'm going to share with you now a real example of how we did this. So if you look here at this screen, this is a 2-week capture of distinctive, working well, small improvements. So I was working with a team. They're around $9 to $10 million in revenue. And I had each of the directors, there was 5 of the directors, and the CEO do this process for 2 weeks. Why did we do this? It was during COVID, and we wanted to figure out how do we start to capture from our employees and those that we serve, our customers, what's distinctive, what's working well, what can we improve? Giving them the pattern of in real time, capturing feedback, utilizing the feedback to bring it back to their organization and to discuss it. We see from even those who are in the agile community, IT technology, running retrospectives or ways to kind of figure out what's working well, how can we improve that is the best way to create a stronger organization. So you see here in these columns, they wrote an awful lot. So I'll kind of move through this. Distinctive, they had all these things. Working well, small improvements. These are all the areas we listed. And what we did is we took this, I put it all into this shared mural board here, and we had it. Then I had the team get together in a meeting. We discussed this. Here's how we made action plans. Once we organized it, we then took all of these small improvements and we placed them onto this grid. This grid here looks at different domains of the work to get things done. And we said, first place, with all the things that are small improvements, what's relatively clear? Clear meaning that we can do it. It's a known. We have the skill sets and the knowledge to make it happen. And we don't need to put very much resources or money into making it happen. So you can do the same thing. You can get your team together, ask them for a week or maybe 2 weeks to go out there and identify distinctive, working well, small improvements. Cluster those into common areas. You can cluster them into cash flow, cluster them into customer needs, cluster them into strategy and execution, cluster them into current products. Whatever cluster or pattern you want to make, that's your choice. Then you can layer them onto this grid. And this grid is helpful because it helps us think about how do we go about this. So clear means things we can do immediately with very little resources. They put ideas here. Things like surplus PPE, more mindful about staff recognition, exposure to prolonged experience, these kind of things. On the top column here, upper right, they listed things that are called complicated. Now in complicated, we need expertise and more revenue. So in that, it's where the agency and the staff did not have the current expertise. They had to find outside supports. And this is based upon the team's feedback and how they saw themselves. This was a way to kind of identify staffing shortages. There were some challenges we recognized early on in their IT system, VPN lines, purchasing PPE, utilizing training for working at home staff. They can shift those things. Over here under complex, we had a bunch of things that require safe to fail experiments. So these are things that are more challenging and will take longer to put into place. These are things like, how do we ensure we have a healthy work culture returning? How do we identify what our current customer needs might be? And at the end, they had novel practice, which is utilizing chaos. So that part, they're now planning for the second wave of the COVID-19 crisis. So here's another example I'll share with you guys. This was a small for-profit that I worked with. They did the same thing. They went through their distinctive, working well, small improvements. The small improvements were under clear. They framed these things in the same way. So clear, what can they do relatively fast? What's easy to do? Complicated, what requires expertise and excess revenue or money they have to put into a budget? Clear, we can do it, no problem. Complicated requires money and skill sets. Complex means they have to create multiple experiments or small shifts to the workload that takes longer to put into place. It's a riskier bet. Chaos is that, oh shit, everything's gone wrong. What are we going to do about this? And you'll see here at this team, this is a for-profit organization. They wanted to keep or increase the customer service check-in arms to bring in more money in sales. Lots of folks being laid off in other organizations can identify a way to better attract people. They're identifying an increase in the percent of non-New York State market to sell to. They feel sort of commitment and they're going to start hiring outside the area. Challenging things, what we call complicated. They've created 4 new products. Do we create a product development team? So from COVID-19, they actually identified 4 new products or services and they stabilized those and they're making money off those. The customer support team is making money and warming up leads. Can we keep more of that? So in this organization, their customer support was all inbound. So customers called into them, meaning there was no outbound sales calls happening. So they shifted that into maybe 35% of the inbound call reps now being outbound call reps. And that was helpful to create warm leads. They're looking at increasing more virtual staff. The challenging things, complex, created 4 new products. Do we have to create a development team? That's both areas. Lessons learned from COVID-19 show that we are a strong organization. Can we identify other opportunities? We did lose some people, and there's concerns about work. Will we rehire the folks that were laid off? With more robust IT, can we create consulting or for-hire internal operations based upon our skill sets? They're acquiring another organization. Through acquisitions, can we make more opportunities and movement for advancement? Novel is, prior to COVID-19, we had a talent shortage. Will that continue? So what I wanted to show you here was a way to kind of take these skill sets from the distinctive working well, 100 days better, and funnel it into some kind of category. But the main point is this. You as the CEO, entrepreneur, business owner, whatever you call yourself, if you want to get folks back to work, and as folks are returning back to work, you have to be out there. And you can ask them to find these patterns. If people reject or don't want to do it, that's okay. You're getting patterns and recognize they don't want to do it. Ask them. One thing we did at a small HVAC company, they're around 2.5 million, I think, in revenue, is as they went to customers, the folks that were installers or the folks that were customer service, they all had iPads. As they were leaving, they were required to, in their iPads, answer distinctive. Was there anything distinctive this customer or family asked for? Was there anything distinctive about this operation? Did anything stand out to you as not normal? Meaning if you're a customer service rep or you're an HVAC repair person, you've done a bunch of these, you know what normal behavior is. Were things standing out, customer requests, challenges, things you saw in the home, and they documented those things right on their iPad. So as they were leaving, a pop-up came into the screen and said, distinctive, working well, small improvements. All they had to do was write down one or two things. So distinctive, stood out, working well, from the interaction with the customer, what things worked well that you tried and you did. Small improvements. How can we be better as a company, either for you or the customer? Now, if you have 15 reps in the field and they're capturing this data with 8 to 9 people per day, 6 to 8 people per day, you're capturing multiple data sets. And you may think as an individual that doesn't make a difference. Yet the reality is in the large scale, you're going to see patterns. So this HVAC company, what they recognized early on, and it helped them create a decent chunk in revenue. I don't know the exact number, but families were asking early on for virus protection and highly sort of better ventilation systems to block viruses inside their heating and cooling units. So what does CEL do? Bought a bunch of those, and now to every house they go to, they're upselling people on these better ventilation systems to clear the air and to clear out viruses. That's more money for the organization. It's better customer service, and you're now giving customers, we call an unarticulated need. So from pattern recognition, he was able to articulate to a customer a need they did not think they had in the first place. So those of you who are Steve Jobs, I'm looking for my phone. Those of you who are Steve Jobs or iPhone fans, you'll know that's exactly what iPhone did, right? iPhone and Steve Jobs said, no one needed an iPhone until I created one. It's the same thing in your field. You may not be the next Apple, I get that. But I want you to understand that through pattern recognition, you are created what are called unarticulated needs for your customers. One last final challenge. Some people are going to tell me my staff are too busy to do this, or I don't have time. I currently have so much going on. My response is bullshit. That's your job. Your job is to figure out patterns and keep your company viable. So as folks are coming back to work, go through this system. Even yourself, go through what was distinctive, what was working well, what can I improve, and go through the patterns. Again, I'm going to email Erin a bunch of this information from UBCEL. She'll email it off to you. My name is Mike Cardus. I'm an alumni just like you, and I want to help you make progress and have a better organization. Thank you.